For the first time in 70 years, Canadians witnessed the pomp and pageantry that is a coronation. A new head of state for this country also means a new face on some of our money. King Charles III will replace his mother on our coins and on the $20 bill. But for many, support for the crown has dropped. This morning, I spoke to Governor-General Mary Simon from London about the coronation and Canada's relationship with it. Your Excellency, nice to see you this morning. Appreciate you being here.
Nice to see you too, Rosemary.
So I guess my first question is, what was it like in Westminster Abbey yesterday for the King's coronation? What did it feel like? What was it like to be there in person?
Well, it was exciting, and it was. I thought about it while I was sitting there in the Abbey, and it felt very historical, a moment in time, and something that many of us have never seen before. So in that way, I felt honored to be there, just to see it all.
How did it, or did it, make you think about your job differently and Canada's ties to the monarchy, the fact that you were there and representing Canada at that important moment?
It's all very important. I think the fact that we were able to have Indigenous people here in London speaking to the King, and the fact that, the King is new, but he has been involved in the work of the royal family for many, many years. So he knows the issues that Canadians are facing. So it's a time where we just felt that we will have the opportunity to re-engage in the King, and also as now the King and not the Prince, his status is different, and he'll be received probably very much like Her Majesty the late Queen was received in Canada.
Well, I know you were asked some of those questions by my colleague Catherine Cullen before you left, and you said to her, we've got to give him a chance. That it is a hurdle that he has to, it's a high bar that his mother set. And I wonder, when you were speaking with him over the past number of days, what sort of, what conclusion you've come to about whether he will be able to win over Canadians?
Yes, like I said in the previous interview, it's really important to provide an opportunity for the new King to get to know Canadians himself. And, his mother was a different person, and he is an individual as well. So I think that he has to, get to know Canadians much more than he has in the past, but also to engage with Canadians on many of the issues that they feel is important to them, and the relationship they have with the Crown. I think these are all very important things that he needs to bring forth in his own work.
You mentioned your meeting with the King, and you had Indigenous leaders there with you. What was that experience like? Because I've heard, obviously, that the King is aware of the need for reconciliation, is happy to discuss it. What was that meeting like in terms of what he seemed to want to know and what he took in from that?
It was a reconciliation in action, I think, because, we've worked for a few months to get this audience happen between the three national Indigenous leaders and His Majesty. So the fact that we were able to do that is an indication to me that the dialogue will continue, and that they agreed to continue the dialogue at the end of the meeting. It's really important to sit down and get to know each other, to start the relationship in a positive note, and then move forward from there. So this meeting was all about that.
I don't know if you'll weigh in, but I will ask you this anyway. As you know, when he was here in this country in 2022, there was a conversation about whether the monarchy would apologize for colonialism, for some of the harms it did to Indigenous peoples. I guess, first of all, did that come up in the meeting? And second of all, do you see a value in that apology coming from the Crown?
It did come up in the meeting. It wasn't discussed in any detail because they agreed that this was a time, the first opportunity to talk to each other directly. And to talk about the realities that Indigenous people face from the community level, and also for His Majesty to talk to the 3 Indigenous leaders about himself so that they can get to know him and his priorities. An apology may come in the future. It's difficult to say whether it's going to happen quickly or whether it'll happen over years, because when you look at the apologies that have been given in Canada for Indigenous, for colonization and residential schools, that took years and years to get to the point where an apology was done. And the same thing with the papal visit to Canada last year. That took many, many, many years of work by Indigenous leaders for it to come to fruition. So I would think that this also, which is, apologies are very complex things that happen amongst people, and it's no less complex between the relationship with the Crown and Indigenous peoples. There is a lot of work that needs to be done, and we all recognize that. But to begin in a positive way and to keep moving forward, I think is the important part of it, because that is part of reconciliation. Action in terms of substance and doing something is part of that, but also having the dialogue and the conversation is part of that reconciliation process. So it's hard to predict what will happen and how many years it might take. That discussion has not taken place.
No. You've now spent a little bit more time with the King, and I know obviously you met with his mother as well. What do you think Canadians should know about him that they probably didn't see yesterday? Anything about the man himself in terms of how he relates to our country?
I think he's a very easy to get to know individual. He can have very open discussions with people, and I think that part of him is not well known. Things that happen in his life that may be more on the negative side tend to get a lot of attention, but we need to also give attention to the positive contributions that the King has made, not just in Canada, but worldwide, in terms of climate change, environment, diversity. Those are all things that are very important to the King. So one of the things that I saw in our discussions 2 days ago was that many of the priorities set out by the King and the work that he's done in the past meld quite well with the priorities that the Indigenous leaders spoke about. So perhaps there's some continuity there that we can work on.
Do you think he'll be in Canada soon, Governor General? Do you think he'll come for another visit soon?
Well, he's been invited by the 3 national leaders to come to Canada as soon as he can, and they invited him to their own regions and their territory. So he wants to come to Canada. But I would imagine he has many, many requests. So I would imagine that the palace will have to see how that can happen. But hopefully he will come to Canada soon.
Okay, I will leave it there. I know you've got a fun concert to get to. It's been a very busy weekend. Thank you so much for your time, Governor General.
Okay, thank you for having me today. Thank you.